T-minus 5 hours into the Longhorns kickoff here in Atlanta at the Georgia Dome. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. Gerry, the Longhorns 11-1 regular season SEC champions, going up against the dynasty of the SEC, or at least the current one, in the Georgia Bulldogs. The Bulldogs 10-2. The other representative in this game, of course, the Bulldogs gave the Longhorns their only loss of the season earlier this year, 30-15 in Austin. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Gerry Hamilton. This is On Texas Football and the Texas Tailgate. We've got a bunch of guests coming up for you today. CJ Vogel is live on site at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He'll be joining us in a little bit. Also, special guest, Texas Governor Greg Abbott joins us at about 15 past the hour here. We're going to talk a little Longhorn football with the Texas X. That's awesome. I was at a Texas X party last night. That was absolutely fantastic there in Atlanta. I had a great time with the Atlanta Texas X's, just a tremendous group and organization. I'm also going to talk about the other games, Gerry, that are on tap for today. Starting with the Big 12 championship that kicks off at 11. Iowa State trying to take out the upstart Arizona State Sun Devils. We'll see how that goes. The winner and only the winner will make the college football playoffs. Let's get back to Texas. This will be only the second contest ever Texas has played in the state of Georgia. Texas will be wearing its icy whites today against the Georgia red and black. We'll see what happens here, Gerry. A little bit of injury news as we get started. Kelvin Banks is listed as questionable for this game. Trevor Gooseby, his backup left tackle, will be in the game. We think potentially. Let's see what happens here. It's expected to be a game time decision, but could be anything and everything happening there. No other major injury news of note for the Longhorns. Gerry, welcome in. What do you have to say about this one? This is a big one for the Longhorns.
I mean, look, this would be it's not an all-timer, obviously, but in the SEC, this is one of those days that would be tough for Texas to beat. I mean, the reality of this game is this game's being played in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and Georgia is the home state. It's a home game. They'll have more fans. There are a lot of kids on this Georgia roster that played high school football games in Mercedes-Benz. They're all these coaching staff at Georgia, the players, very familiar with Mercedes-Benz. Kirby's rallying cry this week's going to be, we got beat against Bama last year in this game, and it cost us everything. If we win, we get a bye. If we lose, we're going to have to go play at Penn State or Notre Dame or something. So his rallying cry is going to be, don't let this happen to us again. Let's win this game and get the bye. So there's a lot. I mean, there's some things favoring Georgia just from the stadium and familiarity and being in the game so many times. And, look, Texas has playoff experience, but Georgia has national championship experience. And this is going to be a national championship level game today. Nick Saban was talking about it on ESPN yesterday and this morning. This is a playoff national championship level type game and atmosphere here today. So Texas is gonna have to bring their best game today. I don't think there's any doubt. And look, I think it's a great chance. Very few times in the same season does a player get a chance at redemption. And that's kind of been my overwhelming thought on Quinn Ewers this week. That was his worst game as a college player and worst experience. To get pulled out of a game in year 3, for Sark to have to look at you and say, man, you got to sit for a while. That's a low. And he bounced back and had a pretty good second half. This is a shot at redemption for him today. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And this is a chance for Texas to do something in year 1, even though everybody knew Texas was good and they were a talented team. If you walk out of Mercedes-Benz holding the trophy today and you're one in the SEC, man, Texas has had an X on their back before in the Big 12, but it's nothing like the X on the back of Texas if they walk out of Mercedes-Benz with the SEC trophy today. Nothing.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that Texas has to try to win this game because I think it establishes, and I wrote this for On Texas Football this morning, Georgia has, quote unquote, the heart of a champion, Gerry. That's what Sark said on Monday. Beyond all yes, they have Kirby Smart and his legion of coaches. Yes, they have as good or better talent than anybody and everybody in college football. But what is the real difference right now is they have that heart of the champion. They showed it in the 8 overtime win. They showed it when their backs were against the wall against Texas earlier this year and came to Austin and kicked some butt. That heart of the champion is what Texas wants to display today. It's big for the Longhorns to do that. Before we go further into the game, we're going to talk a little offense, a little defense as well. I want to say thank you to our sponsor. It's South Point Dodge. Texas football fans score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has more than 600 vehicles in stock, and especially that Dodge Ram truck. People love that. Their award-winning sales staff doesn't do games or gimmicks. They just get straight to the point by getting you the best deal. Score big today at South Point Dodge. Come see us off I-35 in South Austin or at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. It is Austin's automotive everything. And if you're looking to sell your car, get South Point's best offer over the phone or online. Again, southpointdodge.com. Gerry, you look at this and we talk about this game. What do you think about that comment? Georgia has the heart of a champion. When Sark said that, it almost felt like he was envious of it. You could hear his, because that's what he wants Texas to be, to assume that mantle of the SEC's best program.
Yeah, I think that's what all these guys strive for, is to be to climb the mountaintop, right? And Kirby did it twice, 2 years in a row, which is extremely difficult to do. And with a 12-team playoff, now it's going to be harder than ever to win a national championship, let alone multiples. But yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to say something else, Bobby. We're starting to see, look, Georgia and Texas are never going to be rivals because Texas has A&M now back on the schedule, and OU every year, and Arkansas is back. Georgia obviously has Florida, and Alabama's been their really other rival, right? Georgia Tech, I mean, whatever. But this is how rivalries are born a little bit. Texas and Georgia played once this year, and Georgia bullied Texas on their own field. No way around it. They got bullied. Sark goes in because recruiting, these rivalries carry over into recruiting. Sark goes in and gets Justice Terry. Some people that cover Georgia thought was the most important recruit for Georgia, him and Elijah Griffin, the 5-star defensive lineman out of Manchester. And now they're playing again a day later. This is how rivalries begin. If Texas were to win this game, you dang sure better believe there's a rivalry on the horizon.
It was very funny. My wife gave me a headline for today after Justice Terry committed to the Longhorns and signed with the Longhorns yesterday. She said Kirby is going to be seeking justice today in Atlanta. I tell you what, cold outside but warm inside. They're playing indoor on turf at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's been cold all week in Atlanta. Actually, about midweek started a little cold snap. But Longhorns got in yesterday, followed their normal routine. They stayed over at the Hyatt Regency in town. Texas, Gerry, with Steve Sarkisian just doing what they normally do as far as following their normal protocol. They did it in College Station. They stayed in College Station. Mac Brown, after one issue there, decided they weren't staying. Steve Sarkisian hasn't changed his ways at all. I ran into a number in Atlanta. I ran into a number of current players and their parents. I ran into Cole Hudson and his parents, or not to Cole, but into his parents yesterday at the hotel. Mike Gooseby, Trevor Gooseby's dad. Saw a bunch of those guys. Saw former players like Quan Cosby. Marcus Myers was out and about last night as well. In Atlanta right now, it is a big-time venue. A lot of Longhorns out and about. Of course, Gerry, you remarked that it's going to be very heavily Georgia leaning in the stadium, and that is only natural. Athens only about an hour and a half away from the stadium. Georgia has a rich football tradition, no different than Texas in many ways. So we expect the crowd to be pro-Georgia, but I'm here to tell you, Texas fans are in Atlanta right now in droves. It's not I know it was a short turnaround for a trip from Austin to Atlanta, but there's no shortage of Texas fans in Atlanta right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it, and they should be. And look, this is one of the cool. This is what I said all summers. I feel it's so awesome for the Texas fan base as a whole. Now you're in the places you get to go. I mean, next year Georgia in Athens and Gainesville for games is going to be unbelievable. I've been to games there; it's unbelievable. It's great places to go. And now you're in the SEC championship. Oh, Texas is going to travel big. We're going to travel big for the SEC championship. So it's not surprising. I would think it's going to be 65-35, 70-30 in terms of the stands is kind of what I would think it would be. But it's such a great time for Texas fans. I mean, look, this is a win or lose today. This is Texas is kind of a rival in the SEC to me. And I know that they won games in the SEC, but this is when you arrive. Because here's the thing, and I'm not being mean, Texas A&M's never arrived in the SEC. They haven't played for a championship. They've been in there 12 years and they hadn't really done anything. They had one win over Alabama. Texas has arrived. They're playing in the SEC championship game. And for the Texas fan base, man, it's awesome.
Speaking of the Texas fan base, we've got a guy that leads the state of Texas coming up now. We're on the phone with a governor of the great state of Texas, Greg Abbott. Governor Abbott, welcome to the show. Welcome on Texas football. I hear you're ready to talk a little football with us and a little Longhorn football and the SEC championship.
Man, I am. We've been waiting for this for a long time now, and so excited that the Horns are there. And this is going to be a great day and a great game.
Coach, I almost called you Coach. Governor Abbott, I got a question for you. What do you make of the resurgence of the Texas football, of the resurgence of the Texas football team and program the last handful of years under Steve Sarkisian?
Listen, there's a couple of things. One that Coach talks about all the time is culture. I know it sounds like a simple term or concept or whatever, but it's been a long time since we've seen a culture like that. And you know, I was very close with Mack Brown, and Mack Brown is still a great culture. But I got to tell you, I think that Sark has an even better culture and a better relationship, and is building a lasting program with these players, and that's the key part of the resurgence. The other key part is the design that he's put together on his team physically. You know, look at the player they just signed yesterday. And look at the players they have on the front. And the players they have on the front, they took 3-stars and 4-star athletes and turned them into first and second round professional football draft choices. So what they've been able to build on their team, especially on the line, and be dominant on the line on both sides of the ball, is something that we've been looking for a long time, and Sark has finally delivered.
You carry the flag for the state of Texas around the country. Everybody knows that. What does it make? Does it make you proud to see Texas playing for the SEC championship in its first ever year in this conference?
100%. You know, the old adage that a sports program or a football program is kind of like the front door to the house. And, you know, whether we like it or not, the fact of the matter is that there's going to be people in states across the entire country watching Texas today with the brand Texas on their jersey. And they connect that to our state, and it helps build the brand in the state. And I'll tell you, the opposite is true also. What I mean by the opposite is, you know, what we've been able to achieve. Texas has the fastest growing economy. We rank number 1 for economic development, number 1 for job growth. And so there are people moving to the state of Texas for economic reasons every day. And that builds the brand for these players to come into a situation at the University of Texas, knowing that however things work out for them at that school, if they stay in that school, get a degree, they're going to be living and being able to work in a state where they're going to be able to make good money going forward, because Texas is the number 1 state for those jobs.
Hey, Governor Abbott, thanks for joining us. I want to ask you the vibe in Austin around the last season and this season. You've seen it at its height, and you've seen it when Texas football hadn't been great. What's it like right now in Austin, and how much of it, the change have you seen in the last couple of years under Sark?
180 degrees. So I was on the field at the infamous Kansas game in Sark's first year. And to have that feeling as a fan, but also to kind of know what the feeling had to have been among the players, and then to see the evolution. What did it go from 5-7 to 8-3 to 12-1 or whatever the number was? It's just remarkable to see the turnaround. But for us who've been fans for a long time, we're accustomed and expected to be in this situation. We expect to be champions or fighting for championships. We expect to hardly ever lose a game. And now it seems like Sark has built a team that's going to be able to sustain that.
Governor Abbott, thank you so much again for joining us. I got a question for you. What are you looking forward to in this game? And maybe we can get a little score prediction here from you.
Well, I'll tell you what, and I'm sorry I didn't listen to your show earlier, but I may be repeating something you guys may have already talked about. If you guys can tell me right now that Texas will not turn the ball over, I can easily predict a victory. Yeah. Let's go back to the last Georgia game. It wasn't just turnovers. It was turnovers on our own side of the field that made it so easy for Georgia to score. If we can simply hold on to the ball, we're going to do great. I'll tell you guys a funny story. I was on the field at the A&M game, and I was talking to the SEC, the head of the SEC, Greg Sankey, the commissioner. Anyway, Texas was up 17-0, and they were driving again for another touchdown, and that's when Quinn threw the interception, the pick six. Anyway, Sankey turned to me after the pick six and said, "Man, that was great for television." And so he was enjoying the television side, thinking of the money they were bringing in by keeping the eyes glued to the game for another hour or two. But it's fun to see the dominance they can have, but also recognize the reality that when they turn the ball over, it could be a pick six, it could be a block punt, it could be a fumble, whatever. It's going to get dangerous. But going back to your question, if the Horns hold on to the ball, listen, they're going to win. I think they're the more complete team. And you've seen Georgia have their ups and downs also with their season, in part because of turnovers. But if we win the turnover battle, Texas is definitely going to win.
All right. Governor Abbott, thank you so much. You can hear the excitement in your voice. True Texas fan, thank you so much for joining us here on Texas Football, and best of luck representing our great state.
You got it. You guys take care. Hook 'em.
Hook 'em, man. Take care, Governor Abbott. Thank you so much. Appreciate him joining us, Gerry, as always. Good to have guys in high places who support the Horns.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously a knowledgeable football fan. You see him on the sidelines just about, I don't know about every game, but just about every game. It's a fun thing to see.
Something he said, Bobby, kind of rang true with your interview with Justice Terry yesterday. Man, high taxes in other places. And Justice talked about the possibilities out there, getting outside the box of his small town and his state. And it almost fed right into what Governor Abbott was saying about the possibilities for athletes coming to the University of Texas. It's different, but Justice Terry spoke to that yesterday.
Yeah, he did. He absolutely
you were mentioning the couple of Georgia articles. Did you see that I have the article on ontexasfootball.com. If you haven't seen, somebody asked him about the Dog Nation article. They're great people. We've had them on the show. I was on their show at SEC Media Days, but I think they called you a experienced recruiting analyst, maybe that was sped down to Justice Terry's announcement.
I am both, and I did happen to speed. I did not get a ticket, thankfully, but I very well could have yesterday. It was a lot of fun being down there, meeting Justice Terry, meeting his head coach, Coach Prather, and some of the people supporting him. I met his grandmother and some people like that. His whole team was in the audience yesterday. I thought that was really nice, and it was indicative of a guy. I don't know if you saw this, Gerry, or you could tell on the live announcement, but he's a guy that the adults like.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you? Like, you can go to an announcement sometimes, and there aren't many adults going up to the kids saying hello. It's mostly players and coaches and stuff like that around him. Yesterday, it was a teacher that's a resource teacher. It was a librarian. It was an assistant football coach that's known him since the 7th grade. It was the whole community that was supporting him, which I thought was great as well. All right, we're going to have CJ Vogel join us here in a little bit, probably around 30 minutes after the hour. Gerry, let's go back to what Governor Abbott talked about real quick, if you don't mind, and that's turnovers.
Yeah.
Do you agree with him that that's the key to the game?
Yes. Yes. I want to address one thing in the chat. Everybody's been asking, Justice Terry has signed with Texas. I don't know why the industry websites haven't flipped him to sign, but once Texas releases it, he's signed. Turnovers are huge, especially in your own end of the field in this game. I mean, these championship games are like an NCAA tournament game with momentum to me. And you have to protect the ball at all costs on your end of the field. I'm not asking Texas to play mistake-free football against a team that has 30 or 40 NFL draft picks, has won 2 national championships, and played in the SEC championship. But I'm not going to be that naive and say you're going to play perfect football. It doesn't happen. You may have a turnover in this game, but it can't be inside your own 30. And where that worst case scenario is 3 points with a really good kicker.
Or pick six to Governor Abbott's point.
Yeah, I mean, you got to stay away from catastrophics in this game. There is no doubt about it. And that's where I think, look, Quinn has to play maybe the smartest game this point of his career at Texas. If he's under duress and he has been flushed to the right, ball's got to be thrown out of bounds. You cannot take risks with the football. This team's too athletic. You got to know when to put the football out of bounds and play the next down. You can't have an A&M situation from last week where that ball, it was late. There wasn't, the receiver had not created separation. It was late. His vision might've been, he had a defensive lineman bearing down on him from that side. That ball's got to be thrown away. You can't have that this week. You just can't. And so turnovers are huge. I think special teams are huge in this game, Bobby. Texas, Michael Kern's not going to go out have 70-yard punts and flip the field, but you can't have a 25, 30-yarder off the side of your foot in this game. And it's these things are going to be magnified in a game like this. So Texas doesn't need to play perfect because Georgia won't play perfect, but they need to make national championship level decisions today with the football, in my estimation. Carson Beck does too, by the way.
Yeah, he does. I also say something that I agree with Governor Abbott on, and I got to say this. He said Texas has the more complete team. They have actually since Texas started establishing a true run game with Trey Wisner. That's really been the switch that's been flipped, in my opinion, these last handful of games. When Wisner and that outside zone and inside run game got started and has really become the predominant focus of a Texas team that does have skill on the outside and with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, but they're not relying solely on Quinn Ewers in the quick passing game or even the downfield passing game. They're relying right now on the run game, and I think that makes Texas, at least right now, with the number 1 ranked defense in the country, the more complete team as well.
Yeah, I think offense, defense, Texas is the more complete team. I think when you get in the special teams, you might have an argument, right? Yes. Overall. But I think offense, defense, yes. And look, I also think this. It's similar to the A&M game last week for me. It's a little different because that's a rivalry that came back after 13 years of not playing. The emotions are going to be running high in this game because of the last game. Texas, football's an emotional game, but you can't let the emotions get the best of you and get a 15-yarder on 3rd and 1 after you run for 6 and keep a drive alive. You can't get a late hit personal foul on the sidelines on the Georgia side because they're running their mouth at you. And it gives Georgia a chance to score points. Football's an emotional game. It's always been an emotional game. It's meant to be an emotional game. But you can't let your emotions get your team beat today. And that goes for both teams because there's going to be some chirping in this game after all.
We'll talk a little bit more about the keys to this game, Gerry, in a second. Super Poppy, they said you drove faster than a Georgia player. That might be hard, actually. Gerry,
I got a response to that. Do you think when Georgia fans are just like out in the town, in Athens and they see a Georgia player drive past them, going a little bit over the speed limit, they start singing "Jesus Take the Wheel"?
Gerry, come on. Oh, come on. Don't go there, baby. All right. Jerry's Jack's Links been waiting for a punt return or kick return all season. Today would be a great day to see one, but I think it comes down to Burt Auburn. Gerry, you mentioned this on Friday's live stream. You said, what if we came back on Saturday afternoon after the game and called Burt Auburn the game's MVP? That would be Texas with a win if that's the case.
I'll feel really good if, obviously, if Burt Auburn's the MVP, Texas won the game, and it needs to be from the left hash.
Yeah, there you go. Nicholas Tamsa, hook 'em from Hawaii. Hook 'em back to you, Nicholas. Thank you for the great content this year. Pete Kwiatkowski, best DC in the nation, determined by this game. Ooh, he's calling out Glenn Schumann, the defense coordinator for Georgia, as well as defensive super geniuses, so to speak, and Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp. Texas has the better defense today. What do you think, Gerry?
Well, you know what's interesting is it's somebody asked Kirby in the press conference, I guess the media availability was Thursday, about Will Muschamp. Is he going to be with the team this week? Because Muschamp all season has been part of helping a game plan Monday through Thursday. Then he goes to wherever Vanderbilt's playing because his son Whit is on the Vanderbilt team. And it was funny. Kirby almost got a little defensive. Well, I don't really know what his schedule is like. It's almost like, hey, man, don't be telling me I need Will Muschamp to fix my defense right now. That's almost what it sounded like, the question. And I'm not sure. Kirby got a little defensive on that. Well, I'm not really sure. Well, they're best friends. Of course he knows if Will Muschamp's going to be in Athens or Atlanta or Nashville today. So I thought that was pretty funny. But look, the game for Texas offensively is there's one, as much as Georgia bullied and dominated Texas a lot of that game defensively, Smile Mondon didn't even play. He's their best cover linebacker. He is their best space linebacker. And he was injured that game. He was all SEC first team preseason. So they're running at full strength at linebacker. And I actually think that's the strength of their defense. I think Michael Williams is a really good player. Their other interior guys are mid-round draft picks. Maybe a Christian Miller could climb as if he stays long enough, but they don't have the dominant 5 first-round draft picks up front that they just rotate and just wish you, and at the end of the game, you get on the bus and say, my gosh, we didn't have a chance. They're not there. Their linebackers are what makes their team, and they're really on full tilt now at full strength with Smile Mondon, who's a really good coverage backer. So Sark has to find a way to attack the Georgia linebackers, create false steps, create indecision, make them play over aggressive, stretch the field on the perimeter, even if the plays aren't successful, to get them running east and west to try to help open up the run game. But the Georgia linebackers versus the Texas offensive line and running backs may be the matchup of this game.
I think that is a big matchup, but I want to stick to the defense for a second, Gerry, and talk about whether or not Texas actually has a better defense than Georgia. I think Georgia has maybe more depth along the front, and I know that's crazy to say, but as good as Texas has played this year along its front. But here's one of the keys to this game, in my opinion. I think Texas has gotten better stopping the run as the year has gone on.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think that Trevor Etienne, the running back at Georgia, most likely not playing much today, will be a key in this game for Texas stopping that rush attack of Georgia. Because if you can stop Georgia's running game, then that puts focus on Carson Beck, on making him beat you through the air, and that's when he gets prone to interceptions. When you make him beat you as opposed to a balanced attack beat you, that's when Texas can step up. And I will say this, that's not unlike Texas and Quinn Ewers. I think these teams are very similar in that regard. They run pro-style offenses. They really try to lean on the run game at times and bully people. And so we'll see what happens today, whether or not the Texas defensive front can take away the Georgia run game. If that happens, huge advantage to the Longhorns, in my opinion, because as good of players as Georgia has in the back end, I think Texas can bait Carson Beck into more interceptions. That's my.
Yeah, I think first down defense is huge for Texas because I think both teams are going to try to establish the run game a little bit more than last time. Like when Georgia played Texas the first go around, I was told Georgia lined up in pass shell offense 72% of the snaps. That's gone down a little bit from where they were at. That's too much for Kirby's type of Kirby's personality as a coach and how he's really won at Georgia. And it's come down slightly from there, but they're still haven't run the balls effectively as I thought going into the year, and probably a lot of Georgia fans either, with the return guys on the offensive line. And Tate Ratledge is back now, which help a little bit, but he was injured for at least half the season, but they still haven't run it as effectively. They're going to try to establish the run today as well. So I think first down defense for Texas is huge. And the secondary, look, I would say this about the Texas secondary. This is a game that Georgia had wide receivers were open against Texas more than any other team they played this year. If Georgia doesn't drop more passes than any college team in the country this year, I mean, that game could have really been ugly in Austin. They dropped some key passes. So the Texas secondary, it goes back and watches that film this week, and they say, you know what? We got to play a little better this week too, because Georgia had guys open, and they had guys open on third downs. And they just dropped the football. So it's a little bit of a chance for the Texas secondary to pull together and say, all right, that can't happen again. What are the odds they're going to drop 6 passes again in like 3 or 4 on third down? So I think the Texas first down run defense is massive for Texas. And I think first down defense for both teams, because who's going to stop the run? Who's going to put the other offense? Who's going to put an offense in 2nd and 9 more, which leads to more 3rd and 7s?
All right, just got a text from CJ Vogel, or CJ Vogel there on site at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. He's nestling in, trying to find a good place to do a live shot from there. We'll go to him in just a minute. Gerry, before we do that, Drew Lockhart has a super chat I want to get to. Is the committee really going to seat UT and UGA to play for a 3rd time in the college football playoffs? This could happen either way. What happens with this game, right? I mean, even if Texas or Georgia wins, they can still try to put the two together again prior to playing for potentially a national championship on January 20th. What do you think? Do you think that that those guys, Ward Manuel and those guys, kind of get together and say, hey, let's at least put them on opposite sides of the chart here?
Well, my only concern is they can't get the rankings right to start. So how would I bet on them not putting them in the same bracket, which means you'd play for the 3rd time before a national championship game? Now, somebody brought up a good point. Maybe the committee doesn't want Texas, Georgia playing for a 3rd time if they both advance to national championship. Well, I got news for you. Isn't that the most viewed game in college football this year? I mean, that game's going to draw 15, 20 million no matter what. And so I don't think it matters. I would think, but it depends on how it plays out. It depends on if a Clemson beats SMU and that kind of messes up the bracket, right? Depends on how things play out. But I would be surprised personally if Texas and Georgia were on the same side of the bracket considering they've already played twice. Now, but to make that happen, though, if Texas were to beat Georgia, to make that happen, that means they may have to send Georgia to a snow game or a North game. It's like, so I don't know, but it wouldn't make sense for me to have them on the same side of the bracket since they've already played twice.
I completely agree. Before we go to CJ Vogel, we want to say thank you to one of our key sponsors all year long here. Flight by Yuengling is the next generation of light beer with only 95 calories. It's an upscale light beer designed to elevate the customer experience with more taste and just 4.2 grams of carbs. Flight's an easy-to-drink beer with a crisp taste. Try Flight from Yuengling. Thanks to the fine folks at Flight and also our friends over at Faust Distributing. Faust Distributing, thank you so much for helping us sponsor On Texas Football and bring y'all coverage live every game. And now we've got CJ Vogel joining us on site where are you at over there at Mercedes-Benz, CJ?
I'm on the north side of the stadium, I believe. Of course, you can see the stadium in the backside. There's tailgating and everything going on right on the plaza outside as well. But a lot going on. A lot of Georgia folks rolling through. There's some orange out here, but of course, as you would expect, a lot of red and black early on.
That place looked like a spaceship to me when I was looking at it yesterday out there. CJ, we were talking a little bit earlier. We had Governor Greg Abbott on from the state of Texas. We were talking a little earlier about Texas being a more complete team than Georgia. Is that an assessment that you agree with going into this game?
I would say so, and I say so because of the offensive line and the way that they've played. You know, Texas against Georgia and Vanderbilt, they allowed 11 sacks in those two ball games. You didn't have much of a running game in those two ball games. What we're seeing right now is Texas finding its groove offensively, and it starts with the offensive line. Obviously, 160 and 186 rushing yards back-to-back games for Trey Wisner. That hadn't been the case for the Texas run game the entire season. So it feels like they're peaking right now. Of course, that defense is going to come in, compete, and play with the best. We've seen that already this year against Georgia, and we're seeing Texas lean on its defense in a sense that just don't turn the ball over. Just don't put them in tough, difficult situations where the opposing offense only has to go 13, 30 yards to score a point. If that's the key today, you'll see that complementary aspect return. So I agree with that assessment. And again, I think it all begins with the Texas offense and more specifically Quinn Ewers.
You mentioned the offensive line as well, CJ. Latest news on Kelvin Banks and or Trevor Gooseby. What are we hearing on the ground there in Atlanta?
Yeah, of course. Look, Kelvin Banks a bit dinged up. You know, that's just the fact of the matter. Only played 7 snaps against Texas A&M. He's going to try to give it a go. Now, will he be able to go? That's the big question. I was told it's going to be a game time decision, and that's kind of been the word coming out of the Texas camp for the last 2 to 3 days. Just making sure that he can give everything that he can to the Texas Longhorns. If he can't go, Texas will roll with Trevor Gooseby at left tackle. And look, we saw it last weekend against Texas A&M against a pretty solid front. I think Texas has confidence in Gooseby if he's the guy asked to protect the blind side of Quinn Ewers.
Hey, CJ, Gerry, and I have not touched on this yet in this Texas Tailgate edition of On Texas Football, but I think it's worth mentioning here and asking you, how much do you think Arch will play in this game? Over and under of 12 plays. That's quite a bit for a young man to come in, but the run game had some success with it last week.
They sure did. And look, we had the over-under on the winning drive at 10, and I took the under there. But as the winning drive concluded, and you start talking to some folks Thursday night, and then Friday morning comes rolling around, I start thinking maybe, again, that number might be a little higher than 10. Now 12, well, I know it's only 2 more snaps, but I'm thinking 10 to 12 is probably the range that you see Arch Manning in today. Of course, look, Quinn's not 100% either, and he hasn't been 100% for quite some time, but that ankle's still not where it needs to be. And look, we just saw the success Georgia Tech had against Georgia in the run game, specifically with Haynes King. If you're able to combine that with the threat of Arch Manning, who can also stretch the field vertically, you got yourself a heck of a package that you could throw in there. And I think Sarkisian will have some wrinkles for Arch to throw the rock, as well as the read options, the QB powers off the side. Oh, by the way.
Oh, we see it. We see it. It's awesome.
Yeah. We got a blimp in Atlanta.
We got the blimp.
News. But I think you see awesome. Arch for about 10 to 12 snaps a day, 100%.
All right. Gerry, you have something for CJ?
Yeah, you know, I think the one thing is, what was the vibe out and about last night is my question. Like, from a Texas fan perspective, for the people that can't be there, what was the vibe like? And are there more Texas fans than you even expected out last night?
There's a lot of burnt orange, I'll be honest. And Bobby and I, you know, we were able to stop by the Texas X's Atlanta. I don't have any glitter on me for good reason. But we stopped by the Texas X's Atlanta, had a great time there. I was able to, you know, hang out and spend a great evening with the Longhorn Foundation right after as well. There's some confidence. And I think it's, again, you know, it's time for Texas to get their get back. And that's the big message. And just kind of parading around downtown Atlanta. There's a good amount of orange, of course. It technically isn't a home game for Georgia, but we're in the Peach State. We're in the hub for Georgia fans. But Texas fans, as they do, they travel very well.
We'll give our predictions now, because if people, CJ, what'd you go with? Because if people haven't heard, because we're all do this on different shows.
I went with Texas 24-19. I think it's a low-scoring game. I said it would be 4 field goals for Georgia, maybe a bit, over the top there, but I think it'll be a relatively low-scoring game.
I'm at 24-21. Bobby, what'd you go with?
I went with 20-14 Texas. I think Texas moves the ball more consistently today than Georgia. Georgia, though, look, when they get going offensively and you don't adapt to what they're doing, they'll score touchdowns. Not unlike Texas to some degree. And so I do feel, and this is something that I agree with, I feel like Texas has the more complete defense. I think Georgia, even though they've started running the ball more successfully of late, without Trevor Etienne, he was a real difference maker, in my opinion, in that first game. Without him, what do they really look like in the run game? CJ, last thoughts before we have you on the pregame show. What are you have anything you're thinking about right now or monitoring before the game kicks off?
Yeah, last thing I'm monitoring, I don't know if we'll get a true update, but what's the health of Jaden Blue? It's been completely pushed aside this week. Texas has done a good job of concealing it, of course. But that's a guy, again, he didn't finish the A&M game, bit dinged up with the shoulder. If he's able to go and go for fully, that gives Texas that speed package out of the backfield. The 21 pony package is available. If not, that's a big page out of the playbook that's unavailable for Steve Sarkisian. So, look, I'm headed into the stadium the next 15 to 30 minutes. I'll be out on the field. I'll be out in the press box. I'll get an answer, but right now it's an unknown.
That should be some good food in that press box. Hey, CJ, you're a dog guy. I got to leave you with this. Is there any truth to the rumor that collies wake up at 8 and go to bed at 4 every day?
Well, Gerry, I should know.
4, baby. 8 and 4.
Oh, I was like, where is he going with this?
That went right over my head. I got 2 Shelties at home. They're sisters of the collie, so I don't know. They stay up pretty late and just keep yapping. But 8 and 4, I mean,
collies wake up at 8 and they go to bed at 4. A&M loves the 8 and 4s.
All right, CJ, we'll talk to you soon, dude. Take care of yourself and good luck.
Real quick,
there.
I got some pants. Don't worry.
Yeah, you need
there we go. CJ had to go grab some pants. CJ, also, by the way, I got to say this. Good-looking guy yesterday. He was wearing a sport coat, Gerry. Not the quarter zip that he always wears there. Yeah, Mama Vogel, he also got a haircut. Mama Vogel's going to be proud. Her son wore a sport coat last night at the Texas X's in the foundation events. CJ, you take care, buddy. We'll talk to you again later.
Thanks, guys. Y'all have a good one.
All right, you too, man. Good stuff from CJ Vogel out there live on site at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in pregame. Gerry, we talk about this game. There's a lot of pieces to it that we've gone over and talked about. Let's talk a little here. Thanks for William Nish. Thanks for bringing Governor Abbott on. Looks like almost everyone loved him. Do you expect Texas to try to get that running game going early to keep those edge rushers off of Quinn Ewers?
It's who's going to break tendency. That would be a tendency breaker for Sark a little bit, right? He likes the perimeter passing game to almost set up his run game. Is he going to – I'm interested to see how he attacks the Georgia linebackers. So is he going to attack them with the run, then go to the perimeter passing game? But he's always been a throw first in his script. Is he going to move off script that much? That'd be a tendency breaker for Sark, Bobby.
It would be, but I think he has to. I think he has to find a way to slow down the rushers, especially Gerry, if Texas does have to go with Trevor Goosby.
Yeah.
Look, we talked in pre-production meeting about, look, they see Trevor Goosby out there. You think that Will Muschamp and Glenn Schumann and Kirby Smart aren't going to say, we need to test that guy. He's the redshirt freshman.
Jalen Walker will be coming off that edge. And then when he's not, you got Michael Williams. I mean, if Goosby has to play a lot, they are gonna put both of their guys on him every single play. It will be one or the other, and I think they'll look for some Jalen Walker matchups in that case. First game, Jalen Walker played off both sides, but when I saw Georgia have the most give Texas the most difficulties, it was when Michael Williams was on the left and then Jalen Walker is playing off the right. Now, I think Cam Williams is grown as a player since then, but they're going to attack if it's Trevor Gooseby. I'm not saying Trevor won't hold up. Don't get me wrong, chat. But if I was playing Texas and I saw that, I'd say, all right, Jalen, we're calling this. Go get it. Let's go test him, see how he's going to do today.
Yeah, you got to put guys like that in the fire. If you're a Georgia team, so we understand that. One of the ways to slow them down, though, as William Neese just mentioned, is running the ball more effectively. And Gerry, I would echo a sentiment you just made. Cam Williams has improved the second half of the season, but it's not just Cam Williams; it's the entire right side.
Yeah.
He and DJ Campbell have become more simpatico since that Georgia game. Remember that Georgia game that DJ Campbell overwent on the twist and had a clean run at Quinn Ewers. They've gotten better since that game, feeling the pass rush. Now, that doesn't mean, I will say this, you can be a great offensive lineman and still lose to some Georgia pass rushing.
100%.
Yeah, that's going to happen. So you're not looking for perfection in this game. You're looking for progress, meaningful progress where Quinn Ewers doesn't look like he's running for his life every single time out the door. All right, we're winding down here on the Texas Tailgate, brought to you by our friends over at South Point Dodge and Yingling by Flight. Our Flight by Yingling. Gerry, a couple more thoughts before we let people go and get started on this Big 12 championship game that kicks off in about 10 minutes here. You have a feel for other teams in the college football playoff on the games today. Do you like Clemson over SMU? What about Iowa State, Arizona State? What about Oregon, Penn State? Who you like in those games?
Arizona State right off the bat is going to be interesting. They lost their best receivers, having a great year, Jordan Tyson, late in that Arizona game. I think separated shoulder, so he's done for the year. So is that going to impact Arizona State against Iowa State today? Look, it may, because he is their big play receiver. Sam Levitt's been tremendous at quarterback for them. It's going to come down to can Arizona State run it with Scatabo. I mean, that's Scatabo. That's what this whole season's been for them. And it started when he rushed for 270 on Mississippi State. So it's going to be them running the football against Iowa State. And then the other thing with that is since these two teams haven't played this year, is Arizona State going to turn around and tackle Iowa State's back? Their defense has played really well this year. But I think it's been their secondary that's been really good for Arizona State. Their front's going to have to stop the run versus Iowa State. I tend to go with Iowa State with Jordan Tyson. I think Arizona State was a hotter football team, but I think that's a key injury late in the year when it's near 1,000-yard receiver for you. I like Clemson over SMU because their backs are against the wall. And maybe SMU brings it like that too. But look, Clemson is – they played better. The Georgia game was ugly. They were playing better. Then they lost to, I think, a top, if not the best player in the country, one of the top three, definitely the best player next year, Lenora Sellers. So I think Clemson's going to bounce back and beat SMU. You want to say James Franklin's going to get over the hump, but it's tough for me to go there until he does. Oregon's really fast. It's fast versus power in my estimation in that game.
Yeah, and I actually am going to go. I did this as well in the Saturday morning conversation with Rod and CJ. I went with I went with Oregon over. I went with Penn State over Oregon in that game. Clemson over SMU, and then Iowa State over Arizona State. You mentioned the wide receiver from Arizona State. He caught 75 passes this year. Their next highest receiver, Gerry, 17 receptions.
Yeah,
that's a big
loss. Huge loss
for Arizona State to keep the defense honest and allow Scatabo to actually get running there. So I think that's the game I'm going to be tuning into first, as will many of you, I am sure. All right, Gerry, we had a couple other super chats. We'll get to those another time. Or actually, Trace, I believe it was Jeff Carey. You wanted to ask the governor question. Thank you for that. We were unable to do that in real time. Your next super chat is on us, but thank you for doing that as well. We also had 420 somewhere here. Are recruits allowed at any of these college football playoff games, Gerry?
Conference championship games, teams can't host recruits unless something changed and I missed it. Teams can't host recruits. We're going to have to check on the playoffs because we've never had that scenario before.
It's a home game.
It's a home game, so you would think you could, but
is it during the quiet period or the dead period, though?
It actually is.
Well, it's not for the portal, though.
Now, here's the question: Can you?
You can have it for the portal. You have portal players,
portal recruits.
Interesting.
So, probably not high school, but if a portal kid's making an official visit, he's going to go to the game.
Good stuff.
So that's something we'll have to talk about. And hopefully we don't have to have the conversation because that means Texas wins the SEC championship. But if they don't, they host the first round game. How many portal official visitors will they have for that game?
Yep, absolutely. Very interesting. All right, Gerry, that's going to do it. Juan Garza also wanted to know, did Texas stay in Katy or College Station? For some reason, I thought they stayed in College Station. I mentioned that earlier. But when
in recent years, they stayed Lake Conroe.
Yeah,
which is now the Margaritaville Resort. I don't know what it was. I can't remember what it was called before, but there were some years where they stayed up in the Lake Conroe area. I think at the end of that rivalry. I don't know where they did this go round.
Yeah. All right. Just to sum up, Texas playing in the state of Georgia for the first time since Darrell Royals' first ever football game as head coach at the University of Texas. The Longhorns beat the Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta, by the way, at Georgia Tech Stadium in Darrell Royals' debut as head coach at the University of Texas. That is the only other time the University of Texas has ever played in the state of Georgia. They played Georgia Tech at one point, but that was in a Cotton Bowl, I think, back in either the 40s or early 50s. So this is the University of Texas' first foray in at least, 70 years into the state of Georgia. They played the Georgia Bulldogs 10-2, Texas 11-1 on the season, regular season champs in the SEC. I mentioned earlier, Texas in the icy whites today. So Texas will be, even though they're the home team because they won the conference championship regular season, they elected to be in the white uniforms. Also, Gerry, you mentioned this early on in our pre-production meeting, and I want to bring it up now. Texas has only lost twice into the same season. Well, the last time Texas lost twice to the same team in the same season was more than 114 years ago. 1909, Texas lost to Texas A&M twice in the same year. So let's
get a plaque made now for that.
Let's not do that to Georgia today. As we prepare for this game going forward. All right, we'll be back with a little pregame show at around 2:30 or around 2 o'clock this afternoon, and then we have the Watch with Us as well as the postgame show with Rod Babers and Brian Robeson. Gerry, you have anything you want to end us up with here before we let people go and get to these games?
No, I think that one of the outside of this game and the meaning of this game, this is how rivalries are actually built and born. Is Georgia went and kind of bullied Texas, they bullied Texas and Austin. Then it goes to recruiting, which factors into all this in the SEC conference. Now, Justice Terry goes to Texas on Friday, a 5-star, one of the top 2 defensive linemen in the country from Manchester, Georgia. And now you get the game today for the SEC championship. I mean, this is how rivalries start, and this is how they're born. And it's never going to be the Texas A&M or Oklahoma rivalry, but this thing is about to get cooking between Texas and Georgia. You can see it coming. It's going to be really emotional. Georgia fans are big mad about Justice Terry going to Texas now. There's some recruitments that are different, and this is one of them for Georgia fans.
Yeah, well, they're going to try to show Texas who's boss still in the SEC, and Texas is trying to issue in a new world order. That's essentially what's happening today in Atlanta. All right, Gerry Hamilton, our producer, Matt Hutchinson. Also, special thanks to special guest Governor Greg Abbott, as well as CJ Vogel checking in there live on site from Mercedes-Benz Stadium, as well as our sponsors, South Point Dodge, there off the Motor Mile in Austin, as well as our friends over at Yingling and Flight, the light beer, as well as Faust Distributing. All right, Gerry, that's going to do it. Y'all have a good one today. Enjoy the games. We'll be back around 2 o'clock this afternoon to update you on any late-breaking news as it relates to Kelvin Banks, Trevor Goosby, perhaps Jaden Blue, and more. For Gerry, Matt, I'm Bobby Burton. Hook 'em.